What's good, y'all? Welcome to the John Katz Show, episode number 62. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a minute. I hope everybody has been great. If I'm reminded of anything recently and often, it's that life is tough, and everybody's going through it, and we really all are in this thing together. We really are, and I hope you guys know along those lines, if I'm not on the show for a while or online for a while, if anyone ever does need an ear or anything like that, you can always reach me. My messages are always open on Twitter, JohnCat79. You guys can email me, johncatshow@gmail.com. I know it can get pretty dark and lonely out there sometimes for people, and nobody's really alone. You might feel alone sometimes, but none of us really are. And if we do nothing else in life, none of which I have figured out, I know for sure that being there for one another and helping each other through stuff, even if it's just a conversation or something like that, that can't be bad. That can only be a good thing. So just want to put that out there before I get into the show. Hopefully it goes without saying. And I've gotten to know a lot of you. And even if I don't know you, that applies to whoever. So in any case, lots to catch up on. I'm not doing a list this episode. I just want to rant about whatever. I'm overdue for a good brain dump on stuff. So whatever I end up talking about, we'll talk about. But in regard to last week's list, I do need to correct something. OCD, just to get it right, even though that was a couple months ago. I did the top 25. Was it 20 or 25 Pearl Jam songs? I need to correct that. Thank you, Abraham, on YouTube. So I posted the video, and I thought it was actually great that this guy Abraham commented on YouTube. He's like, a Pearl Jam nerd aficionado, and I love that the episode reached people like that. So just to clarify, at first I thought it was funny. I thought that he was being like, he commented a couple times on the video. The first comment just said, "Rise, period." Now that's a Pearl Jam song, and that was included on my list, so I thought he was giving me like his top song. So I was like, great pick, broski, And then I realized, I was like, wait, I called it Rise Up on my list, and the name of the song is Rise. And then I realized he was correcting me. He didn't say anything. He just wrote Rise, period, which has now kind of become a running joke for that type of sentiment. But so just to correct that, I said Rise Up, which is the lyric. I want to correct the name of the song is Rise. And then regarding Yellow Ledbetter, which appeared, I think, number 3, really high up on the list, I had said that it was on the 03 Lost Dogs B-side album, and then it was also on the 04 Lost Dogs or something. I messed that up. It was the 03, which was the B-side Rarities Lost Dogs, and then it was 04 Greatest Hits, which thank you again, Abraham, for correcting me on that. And then he said another song was a cover. Glenn What's-His-Face helped write Society with Eddie Vedder. It was not a cover. Eddie did the first version, even if he co-wrote it. Clarify that as well. I gotta adjust the mic here. I think it's a little close. But no, I thought it was cool that somebody that deep into Pearl Jam was watching it and paying attention to my Pearl Jam countdown list, because that's exactly the kind of people that stuff is for. So, like on Twitter, I've kind of ingratiated myself with the Dave Matthews nerds on there, rightfully so. I mean, there's people so deep into the game when it comes. They'll tell you, that was only the second time Dave brought out the Gibson 5-string on that song. I'm just making stuff, but it's to that point. They know which guitar is used how many times and all the different arrangements and all the different orders of all the different songs. And I start nerding out on some of the set lists and the rarities and things myself. It's really very cool. I was having that conversation about, it's an interesting thing. I wonder what people prefer, because for me, it's a no-brainer. I was talking to somebody about concerts, and I recently went to the 2 summer Dave Matthews shows down here. And one of the great things about Dave is, and I've gone to 2 nights in a row many times, if anything, they might repeat like one song. Let's say if it's on the new album and they're promoting it. So like lately they'll do Madman's Eyes back to back or whatever. And Cornbread comes to mind when I first heard it on that first tour. They played it both nights, that kind of thing. But it's very rare, and 99% of the songs won't be the same from night to night. And certainly the order of songs won't be the same. And certainly the arrangements of those songs and the way that they play them won't be the same. And I was talking to someone who said that they like when they go to certain bands, what set list you're going to get. So if you look at the tour, to date, you could see the set list and you know you're going to get that set list. And she's like, I'd be annoyed if that wasn't the case. I was like, that's the whole magic. I'd much rather have no idea. And you get hit with some rare stuff. I mean, look, it's a crapshoot. You could also get a worse list. And then there's happy mediums. Like I saw the Chili Peppers recently, and I was looking up their previous set lists. And I'd say 70-80% of it is repeated, even though not in the same order. So I had a general idea of what we're going to get. And then, sometimes they'll mix in a couple things here and there. But it's interesting. I think it says a lot about someone's personality that they would want to know in advance. Some people would prefer to know, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to hear, and I'm counting on hearing this, this, and this. And then other people would just like surprise me. I love that it's different every time. Sometimes you're going to get something legendary, and sometimes you may not. It's like a spoiler on a TV show. It's actually interesting now that I'm thinking about, because that goes against how I am with most other things, which is very interesting. I never really thought about that dichotomy before, which is, and I've talked about a ton on here, I'm very not spontaneous, and like I want to know stuff in advance, right? I don't want to be hit with surprises. But I love it, I guess, when there's not anything real at stake, the surprise. So like in a movie, I don't even like watching, this goes along with the concert. Like I would never want to know what songs are going to be played before the show, right? Now, I don't have any skin in the game there. That's pure entertainment value. So I guess I like the element of surprise, where when my actual life and livelihood or whatever is on the line, I guess I don't want to be so surprised, which is interesting. But yeah, I don't even like watching trailers for shows or movies because I pick up too much. It already ruins it. I want to go in fresh. I don't want to even know maybe basic plot. Like the stuff that's if it's not revealed in the first 5 minutes of the show, I don't want to know about it. And I know people who are the total opposite. I know people that will say that it's more enjoyable if they know what's going to happen, which is interesting because I think with a lot of these shows, I mean, especially certain types of genres, they certainly design them with the idea in mind that we're going to reveal things at a certain time, and then that's all part of the entertainment experience, is the surprise twists and turns and stuff. So you're removing that aspect for yourself. I don't know. What else has been going on? Current events? I don't know. I don't want to... I thought about talking about some current event stuff, but listen, everybody's talking about that. The election. It's a strange election year. It's weird that we're having an election in a few months and everybody just seems so disenchanted and disillusioned and just numb the fuck out with the whole idea of the process. And is there anyone in this country who plans on voting who's torn between Trump and Biden? Does that person even exist? I don't think that person exists. And if that anomalous person exists, it's not enough to move the needle because there's like 5 of those dudes. Now, there may be people sitting home thinking, I might not vote at all, and they need some sort of incentive to, like I said, almost every election's about turnout anyway, but I don't think it's ever been more true and more severe than it is at this point. I'll say what I always say about politics and government and everything else. We need to strip it down, dumb it down. We need to get back to the basics. We need to master the fundamentals that the federal government was intended to take care of, which is 4 or 5 things. And then we can start tinkering with everything else. We're falling apart at the seams, and we're just adding and adding and adding, and we're doing all this stuff that nobody cares about. And the messaging is stuff that nobody cares about. It really is so much more simple than people want to feel safe and secure, and they want stuff to be affordable. And then they want to be left the fuck alone. That's most people. And we're not doing that. Most people don't feel safe and secure right now, whether it be literally and logistically speaking when it comes to our border and our foreign policy and stuff like that. And when it comes to living and the cost of things, nobody feels secure right now. So why don't we run on that stuff? Why don't we master that stuff? And then we can worry about all the rest. I hear a lot of people debating and arguing every day over issues that don't actually affect anybody. And it's a really difficult thing to watch and digest. I think that is why people like myself just kind of like, fuck this whole broken system and this uniparty, and they're all doing the same thing. Like, I will comment on a current, I don't think I've even discussed it much on here at all, which is the whole deal in Israel. And listen, I'm not the spokesperson for Jews or any of that kind of stuff, I can only speak to my personal experience and the way that I see this thing, and the hatred and vitriol and misinterpretations and misguided energy and lack of knowledge and lack of context. And yeah, while I may not be the most religious person, I'm going to always be defensive and protective of my people. And, people often get into the weeds of, well, what is Judaism? Is it a religion? Is it a race, ethnicity, culture, whatever? It's all that stuff. And again, I'm not the authority on any of this, but yeah, you have the religion, but then of course you can't parse out the aspect, obviously the cultural stuff, but even the racial, ethnic stuff. Look, when I do 23andMe, I come back 99.5% Ashkenazi Jewish. So what is that saying? It's saying that I'm from a very small lineage of people that originated from an ancient tribe many thousands of years ago. And so, of course, I'm going to feel a certain level of allegiance and connection with just that aspect alone, religion totally aside. But, yeah, let me say a few things about it. One, no word has been more misinterpreted and misunderstood and bastardized and misused than Zionism. Okay, first of all, this is a deeper rant to get into than I was, just because I have a lot of thoughts flowing through my head right now. Here's what Zionism has always meant to me, and here's what I've always taken it to mean, is you believe in the right for the Jewish state of Israel to exist. Point blank, period. You believe they have the right to exist. Now, what I see and what I hear all day from people that are extremely critical of Israel and Zionism, when people accuse them of hating on Jewish people and anti-Semitism, they say, whoa. I'm only hating on the Zionists, not Jewish people. I only have a problem with Zionists. And you say, well, what is a Zionist? And they'll get into a whole thing about this evil cabal of people that want to control the world. And that twisting of the definition in and of itself is anti-Semitism. There's no other way to define that. If you're going to take a word that meant that the Jews have a right to exist in the state of Israel, and you're going to say that it means that there's this evil cabal of people that want to control the world, well, now you're already buying into the essence, core, foundation of what really anti-Semitism is and why it has. People say, why does it have its own definition? Why don't you just call it racism? Because it includes with it this whole story. It includes with it these age-old tropes, and it includes the stuff that led to a real ethnic cleansing and a real Holocaust of these people. Genocide is another word that just gets misused all day long. But so yeah, when it comes to this whole Zionism thing, when you say XYZ about Zionism, you're referring to the vast majority of Jews, because it's who does, and that's the point. Why does Israel exist? Why are these people even over there? Like I said, the context surrounding it is just so steeped in hypocritical gaslighting and sick irony that just seems to be lost on everybody, which is these Jews are all living there because they escaped, like I said, a real genocide that wiped out a third of their world population. And it just barely gotten back to where it was. And more than a third of the current population lives in this tiny sliver of land over there. And the people surrounding it, the people that's Hamas and Hezbollah and the people that support them, which, don't get it twisted, is the vast majority of people in those regions. They vote these people in. If those people in those regions didn't want to be led by these groups, they wouldn't be led by these groups. They don't want to peacefully coexist with Israel. They want the Jews gone. If you gave these people a button and you said you could press this button and wipe every Jew off, they would do it. They would wipe all of them off the face of the earth. Don't get that part confused, because that's at the foundation of this whole thing. And so when you form a secure state and your whole ideology as these Jewish people fleeing from Europe and all over the world is, we're never going to let that fucking happen again. And we'll do everything we can to prevent that from happening again. And then every time these people with the same hateful ideology as the exact same ideology that the Nazis had, when we used to understand the difference between right and wrong and good and evil, the same exact people, attack them decade after decade after decade with the intention of, we don't want you to be alive. We don't want you to exist. And then everyone just dunks on. First of all, if you had cell phone footage available during any war that the United States or anyone else engaged in, from Afghanistan to Iraq to all the way back, Vietnam, Korea, World War II, whatever the fuck, and you were just showing cell phone footage of, burned babies and stuff. Of course, what do people think happens in war? What do people think happened when we dropped an atomic bomb on fucking Hiroshima and killed 100,000 people? Who do you think those people were? You talk about targeting civilians. First of all, if Israel wanted to carry out a genocide, which everyone's claiming they're doing, they would have done it a year ago. Back in October, they could have done it in 2 days. They could have done it 10 years ago, 20 years ago. If they actually wanted to wipe out the civilians in the Gaza Strip with the artillery, they could. They could do it in 2 seconds. What are people talking about? If they're trying to commit genocide, then they're the absolute worst at doing it. So they go hard in the paint because it's an actual existential threat. Again, they had 1/3 of their population wiped out before. It's what they're doing there in the first place with the promise of, we're never going to let that shit happen again. And now when they're threatened and they go hard in the paint and they say, we will not we will not deviate, we will not give an inch. And all we do is criticize them and hamstring them and accuse them of doing what was done to them a couple generations ago. I always say, think about if it was reversed. Think about if instead of 16 million Jews on earth making up 0.2% of the world population currently, think about if there was hundreds of millions of Jews, and instead of hundreds of millions of Arabs, there was only 16 million, and they were 0.2% instead of a large percentage of the world pop. And think about if 40% of that tiny population of Arabs occupied this tiny sliver of land, and it was surrounded by large countries full of Jews. Just picture that. You have this tiny little sliver with Arab people. It's almost half the world's Arab population. And you have hundreds of millions of Jews instead of 16 million. And they surround this tiny thing. And the Jews are going, well, we want that part too. You don't have the right to exist. And the Jews were flinging rockets in there all the time for decades, over and over, and committing terrorist attacks and committing atrocities. And then every time they did, this tiny little Arab population went super hard defending itself. Do you think people would be criticizing them like that? Or do you think they'd be even way more hateful toward the Jews, who really would now outnumber them 100-1 in the other direction? They'd be going, leave these poor little brown people alone, which is what they're saying now. They view them as this tiny... They're the same people that occupy all those other huge surrounding countries. But they need that little tiny sliver too. And when that little tiny sliver defends itself, they're committing genocide and they're evil. Give me a fucking break. Seriously, give me a fucking break with that shit. And if people don't understand the recent history and people don't understand a war that happened when our grandparents were alive, I don't know how to fucking... You try to redefine that. Everybody questions the Holocaust now. Everybody questions, first of all, the open I'm all for free speech. I am. The openly anti-Semitic stuff, though, the blaming the Jews for everything, from 9/11 to JFK to you name what really happened in World War II. Who knows how the war really started? Who knows what the Holocaust... We fucking know. We were there. It was 2 generations ago. Stop being ridiculous. Listen, why do people hate Jews so much? And why have they for a long time? I've discussed that part before. I'm not going to go down that whole thing. But if you've got people, everybody's proven this from every scientific study to everything. When you put different colored ants in a jar or whatever, from just the most basic biology on up, if you have a group of people that are different, you want to talk about the religious part, of course. Of course. They go, why were Jews expelled from these? Because they refused to convert their fucking religion and their heritage and throw it away. That's why. Because they worshiped a different God than other people. That's why. And when you have this tiny little group of people, especially back in the day, and people were religious fundamentalists, which They are still religious fundamentalists over in that part of the world, which is why they have this whole existential crazy bullshit ideology in the first place. Maybe update your ideology to the modern century and we wouldn't have these issues. Maybe if you didn't want to chop people's heads off for the caliphate or whatever the fuck is going on, maybe we wouldn't have these issues. Maybe if you had a normal society where women could show their faces and people could express themselves freely, then we wouldn't have these issues. Nobody ever wants to talk about that. That's racist, right? You talk about that, you're insulting brown people. What are you talking about? They have the most oppressive culture in the fucking world, and the people that defend that culture, if they tried to walk down the street in those neighborhoods, they'd have their fucking heads chopped off. That ain't happening in Israel. It ain't happening here. But so yeah, you have a tiny group of people who look different than you. They have a different language than you. I'm going through history. I don't know. That's my assessment. They worship a different God than you. Why did they even get into certain fields? The Jews control Hollywood. Yeah, the Jewish people created Hollywood because they weren't even allowed to work in other. People forget what it was like for Jewish people even in this country. Why do certain cultures go into certain fields? I don't know. You see it a lot. You see it in law enforcement. My dad and my uncle were cops. I became a cop. Okay. Yeah, Jews like getting jobs in media. So what? You don't hear complaints that there's too many Jewish doctors. A lot of them go into medicine. Why? Because their dad went into it or their uncle, whatever. Those are cultural things. The hatred and the prejudice toward Jewish people goes much deeper than just a simple racism. Like I said, it attaches an ideological story to it. And if you listen to the actual, which is like, we're all so deep in the weeds on who's really even, for the word racism doesn't even mean anything anymore, but there are obviously some real racist people out there, and they're able to openly say what they want to online now, which is interesting. And without even saying their names and giving them clout, listen, there are people who have devoted their entire, successful people who've devoted their entire existence to tweeting all day long, I'm not exaggerating, about Jews, on and on and on. Questioning everything, like I said, from the Holocaust. If that's any of that's act, they're questioning that. Along with that, then they're in every other tweet something about the evil Jews controlling the world and being responsible for everybody's problems. And yes, you don't hear that with the other forms of racism. And I'm not saying that those don't exist, and those are terrible also. But the people that are hating on, black or Latino or Asian or whatever, they don't have this extra whole litany of conspiracies to go along with it. It's just they don't like those people. And that's the dangerous part, and that's the part I can't stand, and that's the disingenuous part, and that's why I'm even on here ranting about it. And yeah, I guess I would much rather people just be like, and then I wouldn't even, because it'd be like, okay, that guy's just a fucking dickhead. Just if you hate Jewish people, say you hate Jewish people. Don't attach all this stuff to it. Listen, I could tell you as somebody, like I said, who grew up 99% part of genetically whatever, so all my relatives, everybody that I've known tangentially through those people, thousands upon thousands of Jewish people throughout my life, I don't know anyone who's part of some cabal, right? Now, a lot of them are lawyers, a lot of them are in media, doctors, they've gone into all lawyers, they've gone into all those fields that people always complain. I'm trying to think if I have any in Hollywood, right? But what do you think's going on there? Do you think there's some secret panel of people that are picking these people and going, I'm going to insert you into this thing? Or do you think it's just cultural? Do you think that person goes to school and gets a communications degree and comes from a family that, the parents are really heavily focused on the culture and education and wanting them to go into a successful field? The Indians do it, right? If you have parents that would not accept you dropping out of school and they're telling you your whole life you're going to be a doctor, and they're on your ass about getting good grades, and everyone in your family has done this thing, well, then you're going to do it too, of course. Is there some nepotism involved in that? I'm sure that goes on everywhere. But that's a far cry from the accusations that are being leveled. In any case, I didn't even want to go on a whole thing about that. I could actually go on about this much longer. I don't want to get all fired up, but maybe let's not hate on people as much. And listen, when it comes to Jewish people, they want to be left the fuck alone. We want to be left the fuck alone. I don't want anybody. They always go, oh, Jews play the victim card. I don't want anybody paying attention to me. I was talking about this the other day when they had like the Pride Parade at the baseball game, and they have obviously, Black History Month and stuff like that. Don't give me a Jew week. I don't want to be at a game and go, we're representing the Jew. No, I don't want any attention. I don't want that stuff even brought up. Like, leave us the fuck alone. And that's the thing I say about Jews all the time too. There's no proselytizing going on. We're not trying to convert anybody to our religion. When's the last time you saw Jews going around preaching and trying to get people to... We don't want any of that stuff. And when it comes to politics, look, yeah, most Jewish people are going to lean left. So what? Every minority, it's 2/3 of every minority leans to the left. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. And yes, people on the left have never been more annoying in this country, but don't conflate those two things. And by the way, you look at who the left is really with in this case, it's the fringe left and fringe right all hate. Everybody's hating on the Jewish people from both sides. I was watching that stupid the rally that Jamal, what's his face in New York. These people are just openly AOC, and listen, there's people that find this type of stuff inspiring. They find unhinged vitriol inspiring. Here's what I would say. I'm gonna leave this topic. Here's what I would say in all cases. If you're trying to figure out what it is, rather than looking around and wondering what other people are telling you and all these conspiracies or what people are supposedly doing behind the scenes, why don't you use your own brain and your own fucking eyes and just look around? Like I said, who's like you, right? Are there Jewish people in your life fucking with you directly? Is that a thing? Does that happen? Are Jews messing with you in real life? Do you see that happening anywhere? You just don't like the fact that our government sends money over there in support, right? And then you're told that behind the scenes they're running everything. And why are they the CEO of all these corporations? Do you see it in real life? Are there Jewish people bothering you? Who seems to share your values? Do Jewish people commit a lot of crimes and do a lot of stuff like that? Are they all leeching off the government? What are they physically doing in your purview that's so terrible? Now, the people that keep attacking the Jewish people, are those people you want to hang out with? I don't know. Like I said, go try and walk around in those neighborhoods. People are so quick to talk about value systems and morals and all this kind of stuff. Well, just look around. Use your own eyes. Use your own feels. Use your own judgment. You don't need somebody to tell you what somebody's supposedly doing behind the scenes. Do you see it and feel it? Does that feel accurate to you? You ever known any Jewish people? Does that feel accurate? All right, so that's all I have to say about it. Just be pragmatic, be objective, use common sense, look around, use your own eyeballs, use your own experience. It's the same stuff that you always get on about everybody else. That they're coming at you with some sort of hidden agenda or whatever. Everybody's like that. We don't need other people to form ideologies for us. And I think people are searching for a cause, and they're certainly searching for a scapegoat. And we'd all do well to back off of that and have a much more stable, peaceful energy in our lives than all that kind of shit. That's a bad road to go down. What the hell else has been going on? Traveling a little bit. I was back in my hometown for a while. I am from, as you guys might know, Lynchburg, Virginia, born and raised originally. And I was back there for a while. And there's really, listen, I can't speak for anyone, but I think if you live in a place and then you move away from it, there's just something about going back there that gives you the most special feeling that I could never explain and that I'll never feel anywhere else in the country. And just being with old friends, I mean, that applies to people too. My best friend growing up, a kid named Hunter, guy named Hunter now. Yeah, he's living back there now for a while, and I was staying right up the road from him, and we were just hanging out every day doing shit. I mean, when I say it's like no time has passed, it's like, man, no time has passed. And the way we used to ride around as kids, and I moved in high school, but I would always go back and visit throughout high school constantly and in the summers and stuff, and just riding around in the car together back then and then doing it again just very recently and just riding those same roads and seeing a lot of the same. I mean, at one point we were literally talking about our friend's dad. And as we're talking about our friend's dad and this story from our childhood, the friend's dad starts walking up the street. We go, that's him right there. Like the odds that would even happen. But just such a nice thing, the way that you connect with an energy during your formative years, there's nothing else like that. It's the stuff that defines such a big part of you, such big parts of you. And I don't know, it's just such a nice reminder, I guess, of who we are when we get back to that essence. And it's what I'm all about. It's what I keep talking about all the time on this show and everything else. Just getting back, stripping away all the bullshit that we built up over our life, all the weird defenses and beliefs. It's just stripping all that away. And there's no more pure straight line way for me to do that than going back home and reconnecting with some of those people. And it was just the best. And visiting other parts of the Carolinas that I used to go to as kids, and Savannah and Georgia, and just a lot of places. Listen, places have changed a lot too. Savannah is not what Savannah used to be like. Hilton Head is not what Hilton Head used to be like. It's different. The country's changed a lot. The world has changed a lot. Lynchburg's not what it used to be like. But yeah, in general, I don't think, and maybe it's not the same for women. I've actually heard people discussing that as far as road trips, because I was to say there's no better energy resetter than a road trip. Women probably appreciate them the same too. Maybe it's the solo road trip. That's not really you don't see a lot of women doing that. I'm going to go hit the road solo. Whereas a guy, you could just hit the road solo, because I do a lot of these by myself, and there's nothing like it for me. There's no freer, more pure energy resetter, and just being free from the restraints of the normal daily routine and the stuff that we pile on top of ourselves, these structured things. It really just kind of, even without going back to your old hometown and places like that, it gets you back in touch with that natural essence. At least for me, a ton. That and concerts for sure are the best for me energy resetters. There's nothing like going to a concert. Summertime, especially down here, I bitch all the time because it's so muggy, and it's brutally muggy and humid. But I mention that part because the sweat. If you're dancing crazy and singing in the outside summer heat with one of your favorite bands, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like being surrounded by 10,000 people or whatever it is, singing and dancing along to your favorite song like a sweaty, fun, silly maniac. I can't think of anything that's the equivalent to that experience. And then looking up on stage, and your favorite musicians that have just been this connected, emotional part of you since you were a kid, and they're just standing there so close, and you can just look up and see them, and they're playing your favorites. It's like, what else is there that's the same as that? I know I talk about music and live music and concerts all the time, but I think there's probably a reason. It's different than the other forms of art and entertainment that we're able to experience. And I think it's because of that energy coming together. Listen, we can feel energy. We can feel all that stuff. I actually thought of this recently in relation to concerts, which is, I don't do well in crowds, but crowds at concerts don't bother me. Not anywhere close. And it's a way bigger, noisier, crazier crowd. But it's because the energy. The reason I don't like being in crowded, noisy places is because everybody's energy is out of whack, and I can feel it. I can literally feel what's coming. I don't know. This is not to get all woo woo, but yeah, when I'm in a concert, anyway, I think that's the aspect that makes it such a special thing. It's that you've got everyone's shared energy coming, and it really is. Talking about before with the vitriol and the divisiveness and the hatred and all, there's no greater unifier than that. And I'll say it again because it just happened recently, and I brought it up before. I post live music all the time. I recently posted a live song on Twitter, and the very first two people that liked it, one was super lefty, blue wave, all that stuff, and one was super righty, MAGA, all that stuff. And I went, that's amazing. They both love this song. It has nothing to do with any of that other surface tangential bullshit that we occupy ourselves with all day. It just immediately hits at something deeper, and people with completely different political ideologies on totally separate sides of the things that people argue about all day immediately both hit at the same exact emotion and nostalgia and connection with that song. And that's a beautiful thing. And I was talking about that very thing with this dude I met at one of the Dave shows recently. We were talking about that very thing, and then Dave said something a couple songs in exactly similar. But yeah, me and the homie Matt, we were best buds by the end of the show. There was actually an hour-long rain delay, which was interesting, and that was another funny part. So there was this long rain delay, and during that time, me and Matt and these two other chicks that were sitting there, they first of all, they thought me and him came together and that we were best friends, but they couldn't believe that because me and him came in there early. I was talking to this dude for like 40 minutes before the show. He's actually very interesting. He's a psychologist that specializes in psychedelic stuff and whatever. And where was I going with this story? Oh, so there was the rain delay, and it wasn't looking good. In fact, everybody had the radar. They made the whole lawn empty out and leave because of lightning. They don't care about rain. Obviously, it's Florida, but they care about lightning. So they made the whole lawn leave the place. And once that happened, we're like, shit. Like, there's no way they're going to bring all these people back in, and everyone's got the radar pulled up on their phone, and it's just looking terrible. And we're all bummed out. And I turned to Matt. I swear to God, I go, listen, man. And this is after we'd all just had like some really fun combo, and we all exchanged numbers and everything. This kind of stuff is really just great for me. It's something I never would have just done before. I know it sounds basic, but I don't know. Listen, if your thing is not putting yourself out there that much, then put yourself out there. Whatever your thing is when it comes to certain control and rigidity, and do the opposite of that. Even something like drinking with me. I know I'm getting off topic here, but I would never recommend drinking to anybody, okay? I don't think I have the alcoholic gene, thank goodness, because I do have a very addictive gene, but for sure throughout my life, whenever I drink, I never really feel like drinking again soon after, and I don't love the way I feel after. However, I have taken to drinking more recently, whether it be at concerts, whether it be even like going to bars when I'm on the road and things like that, and for me, I'm like, it's a good thing because I'm not a drinker, and it's switching it up. You don't want to get stuck in your mode of this is what I do and I don't do this other stuff. And again, especially if your issue itself is a rigidity. But so when we were all ready to give up and people were actually even leaving because they had given up, I said, you know what? I go, it's been such a great night. I go, like, look how beautiful it is regardless. I said, literally, I go, like, we're putting such bad karma out there bitching about the fact that this show is about to be canceled. I go, whatever happens, happen. He's like, yeah, man, you're right. Like, we had this like total bro out moment over it. I swear to you, within 40 seconds to a minute and a half of us having that combo, the dudes come out from backstage and start prepping the gear again, and they start letting people back out onto the lawn. But we are looking at the radar like we have 2 more hours of this system moving in, but whatever. And then Dave comes out, he's like, well, that was a big nothing. He's like, we're not going to do an encore, we're just going to play straight through. And the energy after they came back, there was something just so special about it. And I think everybody was kind of just, listen, Matt and I manifested the word I've been using. We manifested this shit for the whole place, and we had a nice long jokey laugh about that. And I guess you had to be there, but it was a fun night. Speaking of, I just reminded myself with the manifestation thing. If you guys haven't checked it out, I started doing a new pod. Rick, the producer over at KLRN Radio, those are a bunch of good people. I've become pretty good friends with some of them over the last few years, and he and I started up like a pod about mental health and stuff like that. We just did one episode a week ago. So if you haven't, you could check that out as well. We're calling it Going Mental. You can go to the KLRN Twitter site or their website or whatever. It's got the shows recorded and they air live. And Rick, bless him, knows how to do all this stuff, and he's airing them live now on Twitter and YouTube and all over the place. So check that out. We were getting into that whole, he said he wanted to talk about it more next week, the meditation stuff and the manifestation stuff. And there's a lot of gurus out there right now. I think my social media algorithms also are very tapped into that stuff because I talk about a lot of that philosophical, existential stuff all day. I have a lot of thoughts on this I want to talk about too. Yeah, what I was saying on that show, I'm not going to repeat the whole. I actually posted a clip where I was kind of ranting on this for like 10 minutes, but I think people just kind of misconstrue what the whole manifestation thing means. And the only thing we should be, quote, manifesting, in my humble opinion, is just our truest selves. Point blank, period. Your most authentic self. Again, don't look around other people to guide and validate all that bullshit. Don't concoct some new personality all the time to fit what you think someone else is gonna. It's like, we're not all the same. Whether you want to talk about that from a soul perspective, spirituality wise, you just want to talk about it from a scientific, we all have unique DNA. We're all on a different journey. We're all at different stages of those journeys. And all this stuff, including everyone you know and everything you own and all of it, it's not yours permanently. Nothing is. It all goes away. All 7 billion people on the earth right now, in 100 years, well, maybe the babies, in 200 years, none of them will be here. None of this stuff will belong to you. How many items do you even have that, do you even know who your great-great-grandmother is? I don't. I don't know my great-great-grandparents' names. I don't own anything of theirs. Maybe my mom has a trinket or two. Maybe people have, some pieces of jewelry. This was passed down from your great aunt or whatever. Everything you have is going to belong to someone else, or it's going to be buried in the ground and repurposed by the earth, and everyone you know will be gone. And why do I bring all this up? Because it's just us. I was saying on the pod with Rick last week, it's just you in the shower. We were talking about showers being a great resetter for energy, or if you're feeling a certain kind of way, there really is nothing better if you just want a quick, accessible fix than hopping in a shower. Really hot or really cold, I think. But we have us. We have everything we need inside whatever this soul and all this stuff is. Whatever that is, that's where we access it. We don't need that externally. And I think coming back to the manifesting and all that, people look around externally. What do I want? What job? What thing? What am I trying to attain? And you already fucked up. The only thing you should want to attain is getting to your truest, most authentic nature, and then loving it and embracing it, and not viewing life and death and being born and dying and all that the way people view it. Here's something interesting in relation to all this. The word atheism is used a lot, and I was recently reading polls on atheism, and the majority of people were replying that they identify as atheists. And I thought, we really use kind of an archaic definition, or in my opinion, we use the wrong definition when it comes to that stuff. And if you look at the people that identify as atheists, it's even more interesting because, okay, most people that define themselves as atheists, or people that just define the word atheism in general, and I've talked about this before actually, but they'll say, well, they don't believe in God. And I don't think that should be the definition. I think it should be, do you believe in souls? Do you believe there's a spiritual realm beyond this rock here? I'd like to pin a lot of these self-proclaimed atheists down on that, because I understand why people are rejecting the traditional definition of God, or the God that they grew up with in their church or their synagogue, and organized religion and what that's become. And so I think when you say God, people have a knee-jerk of, well, that's the God they're referring to, the one that I grew up, my parents taught me in the church to believe in, this and that. But I would delineate it and make the differentiation of, do you believe the lights go out when we die and there's nothing beyond this? Or do you believe that there's something beyond this? Because if you believe in souls and you believe there's a spiritual realm beyond this that we can't see and understand, or that something created this, or that there's something after this and all that, if you believe any of that, then in my opinion, you're not an actual atheist. And I think that number would go down. And like I was saying, if you look at the people that are, there's two different kinds of people that are atheists, but the one group, it really boggles my mind, because I was complaining recently about the new age hippies, and they're not real hippies, and how really the greatest trick that, the institution, the elitists of the institute, the greatest trick that they pulled off was getting the counterculture to do their bidding and go along with these government sponsored ideologies. What is that? Those are not real hippies. But those people, even the people, okay, look at the psychedelic community, okay? Look at the people that are actually out doing that stuff, experimenting, mushrooms and MDMA and all this kind of stuff. So most of those people will be like, well, I'm atheist. It's like, you're an atheist? What the fuck are you doing in that field? Eating what do you think you're getting in touch with there? What spirituality is that? And again, I think the Eastern, I always point out, the Hindu stuff, the Buddhist, they don't have that same, idolatry system of having a god the way that, Judaism and Christianity and Islam do. So I think a lot of these people are more along the Eastern. But again, why would you identify as an atheist when your whole vibe is getting in touch with this hidden spiritual realm that's underlying or just beneath this or beyond us or all of the above? And then, the other group of atheists are just these overly practical people, and everything's science-based. And here's why you fall in love. Your oxytocin levels do this, and everything can be explained with a chemical and an equation. Listen, if you go back a few hundred years, everybody thought the earth was flat. We don't know. There's no more ignorant. It's such an opposite. There's no more ignorant people than those that profess to know everything and be able to explain it all away. The real understanding, only enlightenment comes when you really go, I don't understand shit. That's not even a humility type thing. That's just an objectively, hey, I can look around at this infinite universe we're in, and we don't know shit. And even the most brilliant minds on earth that can do Goodwill Hunting type equations, even they don't know shit and can't tell you what it is. And yeah, with that as the premise, but yeah, whatever that thing is that exists under there, that we all feel it. Okay, I can't speak for everyone, but I think we all feel it, right? And I think that's why everyone has this inexplicable yearning that they can't ever articulate or can't ever fully understand, because we're trying to reconcile that. We're trying to reconcile our souls and that spiritual journey with this human construct. And we can't understand it, but we know it's there. And that's why people just have that deep angst for some sort of deeper meaning that they can't figure out what the hell that is. And yeah, the journey of life is really just reconciling all that stuff, isn't it? And the other thing I was thinking about in regards to, manifestation is, because I've heard people say it like, hey, and I say it all the time too. People say life doesn't just happen to you. You can control it. We have control. We create our life for it. Yeah, we do. But everyone does. And believe me, I'm far toward the spectrum of being the guy, unless you live alone in a cave and don't want to interact with people and don't want to have relationships and any of that, if you want to participate and have connections and love in your life and all that, then it's going to come crashing together, because it would be such a narcissistic view to be like, well, I just create my reality. Well, are there other people in your reality? Are they creating their own realities too? Because if everyone's creating their own realities, then you're not manifesting other people, right? So there is that which we can control. Look, I was watching Oppenheimer recently. If you were a family living in Japan in Hiroshima in 1945 or whatever, maybe you manifested the best life for yourself and your family, and everybody's loving and educated and doing really well, and you guys are happy and healthy and great, and now you don't exist anymore because some other group of scientists Well, they spent the last few years putting all their energy into their own manifestations, which was splitting the atom and dropping the sun on your village. So that's obviously an extreme example, but, and again, even that ties back into the way we view life and death and the cycle of life as this be all end all, and it's not. It's a blip, in my opinion, in the bigger picture and in the bigger journey. I was thinking about this in relation to nature and the cycle of life and the way people always say how violent life is and everything is. And it is. If you just look at it from our perspective and our perception, without that big picture, if you just look at it, these animals eating and attacking, and all the animals we kill and eat, and, all these people are vegan and vegetarian, and, well, trees are alive. Fully, all these studies are coming out now saying trees and plants are conscious too, right? How do we know? We go, tree doesn't have a brain, so it's not conscious. We don't know that. Maybe it's meant to be eaten, and that's why it's growing in the first place. And, we all want to draw these arbitrary lines and everything, but if you were designing life and a universe and this type of system, it would be set up in such a way where you say, well, how are we going to sustain life? And you would say, well, with other life. Everything's alive, from that plant to that cow to that fish or whatever, and everything is consuming. It's this cycle. It's the cycle of life. Is that violent? What we view as violence? I don't know. I think, again, we have to fall back on, we can't understand even what we're doing here. We don't understand what we're doing spinning around on this rock all day. And so for them to us make these judgments and proclamations and stand on some moral high ground about those types of things when it comes to the cycle of life and stuff, we don't even know what we're talking about. And yeah, nobody's more uptight and rigid about that stuff than the supposed Zen hippie crowd. Again, these aren't your dad's real hippies. Those dudes are actually chilling. They weren't all caught up in these causes of gender constructs, and they were out in the field having real orgies, and they didn't give a shit, and they weren't trying to impress anybody. No one's more easily triggered than those people. And that's just a really clearly antithetical thing, because you can't be both of those. You can't be the Zen Buddhist eating shrooms out in the field and at the same time be offended at everybody's jokes and people that don't want to use this new language that you created for them to use and everything. You can't be both of those things. You can't be walk on eggshells around me or I'm going to get triggered person, and then also the person who's like into meditation and yoga and all that stuff. You're one or the other. There's a lot of poser. We're having a poser epidemic in this country. Again, you don't need to look around. It's great to look around and be inspired by people and all that kind of stuff, but just feel the energy from people. Authenticity, yes, but intentionality. What kind of energy do you want to put into your life? If you're taking guidance from people and you're trying to emulate people that seem really angry and divisive and bitter and upset and resentful and easily triggered and easily offended and critical and insulting of other people and intolerant, well, then that's what you're aspiring to be. Why do you want that energy in your life? You take that on for a minute, you could spend the next decade trying to extricate yourself from that. You know what I mean? That type of stuff is everything. We have to really look at the kind of, and that applies to everything. From that whole spirituality standpoint to these ideologies to relationships too. You look at relationships, you really have to sit and stop and think. I saw another, what was it? Baby Reindeer. I finally watched. I'm sure most people have seen it. I feel like I was the last person to watch that. Again, obviously that's an extreme example, but yeah, careful with people's energy and emotions and the stuff you invite into your life. Yeah, listen, how I feel talking to someone, the energy I feel I'll define their whole life by that. I'll judge their whole life by that. And I know that's not fair, but we have to be that way. If it feels off in your belly, if it feels off to you, well, that's really all that matters. And maybe everyone else thinks this thing is great, or everyone else thinks this person is great, but that doesn't mean it's for you. It may not be great for you. And just trust that thing that tells you if something or someone's a little bit off. You are better safe than sorry with that. As much as I'm advocating for putting ourselves out there, out of our comfort zones and things like that, yes. But when it comes to letting energy into your personal life that can affect you in a real way, be careful with that stuff. Be cautious. Don't waste your time on something that also just doesn't feel like, if something's not going to be very special or meaningful, don't even waste your time with that necessarily, because again, those are real people on the other end of that too, and you're not always sure what you're dealing with in that regard, and it might take you a while to understand what you were dealing with, and then it's a little too late and you're already sent your life down this whole crazy path. And good to sit back and assess and really trust what's in here. To bring it back to even that spirituality stuff and the religion and God and all that, I'd like to think that whatever we need to ultimately learn and understand it's in here, right? So we don't need to search around externally for that. And look, I get it. Everyone wants connection. Everyone desires connection and has this need to just be loved and understood and feel totally safe and accepted with another person or other people. Not even just romantic love, but just love and connection in general. I get that, and I get why people reach and grasp, but that's the thing. Like I said, but we can't control or possess anything. We're all borrowing it all. Whether it's people, whether it's things, places, nothing remains. The only thing that's certain is that everything changes and everything goes away at some point. It's all borrowed. It's all temporary. It's all the collection of present moments. There is no the past and the future, and I can possess this thing, and so I said recently, I'll say again, love without the attachment, love without the control. You can be connected without being attached, because that attachment, because it will inevitably go away, right? And let's say, I'll use romantic love as an example. You meet somebody, you spend, even in a best case scenario, you spend your lives together. You have that. Now, okay, maybe you die together at the exact moment in a car wreck or whatever. I guess that happens. But 99.9% of the time, someone's leaving before or after that other person, and everybody's coming and going throughout. The people that were there when you're born are not the same people that are there when you die. You're the only constant in that whole equation. So yeah, remove the attachment part where it's like the people belong to you or whatever. And then you also, that's what leads to these codependent type relationships, where now you're defining your value, you're defining your level of happiness based on this other person and based on how this other person feels about you. And well, now what? Now what if they change and they manifest some other shit, or they go down the road and do some other thing, or they pass away? Any million number of scenarios. It's not going to be what it was before, no matter what. So remove that part off the rip. Express love express love from a place of love, not for love. We don't love so that we can get this thing in return. Then we're already setting ourselves up for the disappointing part. We give love from a place of love, just from the sake of love itself. There is nothing beyond that. And then the control part, obviously, you can control yourself. That's it. Point blank, period. Control yourself. That's all you can control. People are dealing with everything else they've built up throughout a lifetime, throughout an eternity. If you're talking about soul, who knows what journey they're on? Who knows what level and stage of that journey? Who the hell really knows anybody to that extent? Nobody knows anyone to that extent. I promise you. You get a couple people in life, I said recently, that really understand you, right? So that's number one. We get a couple people. If we're lucky, we get a couple people in our lifetime that really understand us. So lower the expectation on that, number one. This idea that everyone's going to understand you, no. And by the way, that's what makes it special when you do get those couple people, because If everybody just was jiving and understanding, well, nothing would be special. You can't have the highs without, but the rarity, you can have simple needs. I consider myself to have very simple needs, but they might be very rare. The road to attain those things is not so simple. You could say, well, listen, I want this person. I don't need much I don't require much. I just want to be able to sit in a room with somebody quietly, not have to say anything at all. Just feel totally loved and accepted and understood. Well, that sounds like the simplest thing in the world. But getting that might be the most complicated, difficult thing in the world, because it doesn't just, you can't just pull that off a tree. It just doesn't exist. But even those couple people that really understand you, they don't know everything. No one knows everything. No one totally gets your perspective like you do, and nobody totally understands those things that make you tick inside the way that you do. And that part really is, that's between you and the universe, between you and what people call God. That really is just you in the shower. That's just you meditating. What I said about meditation and what I say about manifestation, and I'll repeat that part of that rant that I did with Rick on that other show, is you can't have these specific things in mind. You can't have these specific aspirations. Yeah, I'm not saying don't have goals in your life, whatever. But when I'm talking about the stripping stuff away, if you're looking around at the external and you're perceiving that I need this thing and then I'm going to be happy, I need this thing and then I'll be fulfilled, you don't know what the fuck you need. Nobody does. There's a lot of things that are hard to attain, but they're not fulfilling or meaningful, right? And so if you're going to meditate, or you're going to say, I want to bring better things into my life, then again, that stuff's inside here. It's not out there. You stop looking around and listing things that other people have that you think are going to fulfill you too. Maybe some of that will. Who knows? It never happens the way we think it's going to happen. The future, good, better, worse, ugly, indifferent, whatever, the future never unfolds exactly the way we think it's going to. Ever, ever, ever. And so, yeah, don't look around and start adding more shit. Strip the bullshit away that you've already piled on top of the stuff that you need to get at, and then clear it all away. And if you're gonna meditate and do all that stuff, yeah, focus on nothing. Focus on nothing at all. Focus on your breathing. Stare at a spot on the wall or a spot on the floor, and don't think about a fucking thing. You're in the present moment, and your only thought is, I'm existing here in the present moment in the universe, and there is nothing else. And then see what comes in. If you're constantly in your head about the past and the future and things you're upset about that already happened and things you're worried about that might happen, if that's how you're occupying your thoughts and your energy, well, what do you think's going to be manifesting into your life? How is that going to manifest itself? That's where I would do the word count on manifest. This would be 500 times this episode. Really, how's that going to translate? And along the same lines, if you're occupying your thoughts and your energy with other people and other people's behavior and what are other people thinking and doing and saying, how's that going to look in your life? So I would say, if you're going to meditate or you're going to manifest or whatever, remove all that stuff. Those are the things that trip everybody up. Those two things. You have the time construct, messes everybody up. The way that we apply time to have meaning in our personal lives instead of just as some scheduling tool as it was intended to be. So remove the past, remove future. Think of everything as a present moment, because it is always a present moment. That's number one. And then remove other people from the equation. Remove the part about where it matters what other people think about you, or them validating you, or what they're thinking or doing or saying in regard to their own lives that you have an issue with. And why are they doing this? And I don't understand that. Remove the part where you have to understand why people are doing what they're doing, because you'll never fucking figure out why you're doing what you're doing. That's the lifetime journey. It'll take you a whole lifetime, if you're lucky, to figure out what makes you tick. You're going to sit there obsessing about what's making somebody else tick. Again, so remove the time thing, remove the other people thing, and whatever you're left with, that is the manifestation. That is who you really are. That's your authentic self. If you can sit with yourself and figure out what's in your heart and what makes you tick without the part where it matters what anyone else thinks about it, and without the part where it matters what you did a year ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and without the part that matters what's going to happen in 5 years from now if I don't do this or I don't. If you remove all that part, whatever you're left with, that's what you should be putting your energy into. And then the rest of the stuff will be as it's meant to be. And stop viewing stuff as mistakes that even viewing anything as a mistake. Even if you think you've caused pain or damage to other people and to yourself, don't stop viewing it as a mistake. That implies, A, that you understand this bigger picture, which we don't. But if you're still viewing stuff as a mistake, then you haven't forgiven yourself and you're still stuck in that past thing, then you haven't learned the lesson. Because if you learned a lesson from it, you wouldn't view it that way. You wouldn't view it as a regretful mistake. You'd view it as a blessing. You'd view it with gratitude. I saw a great quote recently. It said something to the effect of, forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it. We're so hard on ourselves. You only learn stuff by fucking up. That's it. If you don't mess up and make a quote mistake, then how the hell are you going to learn anything? And so aren't those really where the lessons come from? And yes, you'll keep making mistakes. And again, don't beat yourself up there too. What information did you get from that? And how can you apply that to your life? And what did you learn about yourself through that experience? It's the only way we figure out ultimately too. It's like, what do we really need and want? Because again, without the feelings and emotions associated with an event or with something that you participate in or that you go through or whatever, there is no experience. There is no experience without the feeling of it. And how else are we supposed to learn that part about ourselves? And if you're constantly looking back and beating yourself up about stuff, well, there's no worse way to hinder your progress and learning process than that, because you're never getting to the lesson part. You're always just stuck in the I fucked up part and the bad part of it. And again, to view something as a mistake or a failure, yeah, that is presuming to understand the bigger picture. And we do not. We do not. And you can look at your life and actually see how that stuff is already played out. For example, you could look at stuff that at the time you felt was devastating or you felt was a great loss or you were really hurt by something. But then with the hindsight of going through those dark times and processing and releasing that stuff and learning that lesson, those lessons, you can look at it and go, oh, wow, like I'm actually way better off now. I actually dodged a huge bullet there. And so, yeah, maybe some stuff will never be revealed to us, but you could look at the stuff that has been revealed to you and already use that as evidence of the fact that that goes on. That makes sense. And yeah, it's going to look different for everyone. There is no cookie cutter. I'm not giving advice on anything about what anybody should do except what's right for them. What's right for them in a vacuum without all the noise and without all the misguided control and manipulation and all that stuff. The understanding that our very existence, think about that, our very existence of what we're doing here is beyond our current understanding. And if our very existence is beyond our understanding, you just have to start at a place where it's all beyond our understanding. And so then you can't internalize all that stuff. You can't take it all on as some burden. You don't even know what it is. We torment ourselves with that stuff. What can we control? The way we react to stuff, the way that we give love, the way that we receive love. We can be kind and funny and authentic and good-hearted and good-intentioned, and that stuff we can control. And not easily triggered and not walk on an eggshell person, that we can control too, right? Really, just be you. And everyone you're worried about validating or judging you, look around next time you're thinking about that and think, none of these people are going to be here in another blip of an eye, and neither will I. And so what the hell am I even consuming myself with, right? I saw a TikTok recently was talking about, I don't know. They say they measured they say they measured the vibrations that come out of people with different emotions, and that authenticity. First of all, I've never heard authenticity described as an emotion before. It was an interesting way to put it, and how in the world you would measure a vibration from an emotion and what tool they were using. I think a lot of these people are just talking out of their ass, but they were saying that it measured like 400 times stronger than even love, which is the second strongest emotion, meaning authenticity measured 400 times stronger than that. And again, don't quote me on any of that. And I don't even, but I like it. I like thinking that, because it jives. If you're doing whatever your version of authenticity doesn't mean my version. In fact, if you and I are both being totally authentic, well, we're not going to be the same exact person, because nobody's the same exact people. So, but to define it as an emotion, I don't know. I don't even know how to define love. I've talked about that. What is love? Ask just a regular person, go, define love for me. They can't, nobody can just give you, they'll stumble around. Whoa, they'll go, people really like each other a lot, and they care about each other more than just liking each other. And it's, what is that? What does that even mean? What is it to feel love for somebody? I was talking to Rick about this on that other show, and he was saying, that it's an intentional thing that you choose. There's no way. I mean, you do choose to express love, and the part where you can give and receive it in a healthy way, well, that's certainly not easy, and that takes a lot of, I think, growth and learning and practice. So that part's true. But the part about just feeling it, I don't know. I mean, I could tell you, or a lot of people, or times where you'd say, well, I don't want to feel this love, right? You'd rather not feel it. It would be a lot easier if you didn't. So I don't know. To even define what it is a very tricky thing. It's not like defining sadness or other emotions, nervousness or joy and laughter and things like that. Interesting. We'll do an episode on the definition of love, but anyway, I had other stuff I wanted to get to. I'll save it for the next step. I'm not going to keep rambling, and I don't want to split this into two parts. So it's good to be back, and yeah, I'll end it on that note of love. And yeah, and really look around and think about the energy you're giving and the energy you're receiving and how that's playing into your life. Energy is everything, right? Energy is everything. And people talk about karma and all that. It's not a straight line, but you will absolutely experience the kind of energy you're given. Whatever your internal intentionality is, when you're all alone in that room, and when you're staring at the wall, and when you're staring at the floor, and when you're focusing on your, whatever that stuff that's inside you is, if what you're expressing in the world is not the same as that, then you're always going to be in conflict. You're never going to feel unconflicted. And so you have to get that stuff to match up. You have to get that truest energy that's buried deep inside you to match up with how you're interacting and what you're giving out to the world. All right, that's all I got for now. I love and appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will be back with another episode soon. Thank you so much. Be good. Peace.